Hello, and welcome back to another Minecraft Let's Play video with me, Elven Dragon. So today we move out of the water and onto dry land, as we move from the Devonian to the Carboniferous. So since we are moving on to dry land, that means that we need a new space to put our animals. So what I'm thinking is we are going to go into the nearby swamp, and I think we'll try and find a nice good place to stick them. Fortunately, we are up on a mountain, so we can get a nice good bird's eye view of the area without having to waste any of our rockets. Alright, so gazing out over the swamp, looks like we have a lot of water here. We have our half-finished road that's gonna go on back to the ruined town. I wonder if we can see it from up here. Ah, there it is right there. Wow, you can really see quite a ways up here. I think the biosphere tower is almost all the way back to my main base. Wow, that is quite a distance. Anyway, so what I think we are going to do for this is there's an area right over there next to those caves. I think that that might be just big enough for what we want to do here. So if we avoid this monster ravine, and that goes all the way down to Y11. Let's check that out later. So if we fly out there to check that out, I don't want any caves in the way. Mostly because I don't want to have to seal them off and fill them in so we have a smooth area. So it looks like we may have a water hole over here that we may have to seal off. Other than that, I think this area looks like it'll be pretty good. It's pretty nice and flat right now. That might change as we get more things in to the building. But I think this should be just big enough for our Carboniferous bug house. I'm gonna go get that built up, and then I will be right back. Alright, so one live stream and several trips back over to the Villager Trading Hall to restock up on glass. And our bug house here is fully complete. So now I think it's about time that we get in our animals once we fill in some of the random holes that are around here and getting some of our plants from the Carboniferous into here. But I think first what I want to do is we're going to take this pond here and shore up this wall, because we can't just have an unsupported wall here. So now that we have that wall shored up, so we're going to take this pond, we're going to fill it all the way up, and then I think what we are going to do is we are going to carve out a river through here, and this will just serve to break up a bit of the terrain so that it's not all just the same, since this area is pretty flat. So let's just mark out a rough little path through here. I think we'll turn back to that wall over there, right about here, and we'll just do one deep for now. I'm gonna go get that neatly dug out and take out this grass and those flowers, because they do not belong in this time period. We still have quite a few million years to go before we reach the first flowers at the end of the Cretaceous, and then I will be right back. Alright, so all the random holes are filled in now, and there's one thing I want to test before we get really into terraforming and putting in all the plants, and that involves the ferns. So since this is such a big area to cover, I'd rather not have to be constantly bone mealing the grass to get more ferns, and then have to break the grass that grows, get rid of the flowers, and just leave the ferns. So we're going to do a bit of an experiment to see if we can fortune the ferns. So we have regular shears here. If we break 5 of them, we should get 5 back. Break a line of double ferns, which due to a bug doesn't cost us any extra bone meal, we get 10 back. So now what happens if we apply some... Oh, apparently you can't apply fortune to your shears. Oh, never mind then. I thought that you could for some reason. I guess we are stuck bone mealing double tall ferns. At least they don't cost us any bone meal. I guess this is how we're getting all of our ferns for this area. It's going to take a while. Oh well. I'm going to go get this area covered in plants and ferned up, and then I will be right back. Alright, so I don't have quite all of our trees in fully, but I wanted to get our animals in. They're starting to get a little big for their temporary holding cells. These trees are lepidodendrons, which are primitive tree-like plants that are related to club mosses, and their name means scale trees. So part of why they're called scale trees is because these surfaces of their stems are marked with a pattern that look like tire tracks or alligator skin, hence scale trees. Alright, so during much of the Carboniferous, arthropods dominated the land fauna, although there were still amphibians and eventually reptiles by the end of the period. Many of the animals that were living during the Carboniferous were insects, or their relatives. Part of that is because they moved onto land long before the tetrapods did at the end of the Devonian. So before we go inside, I think this is about the time where I need to warn people who have a fear of insects and their relatives that the following may not be suitable for all people. Alright, so if we step inside the bug house here, we have our first extinct arthropod, Arthropleura, the giant millipede. The species of this group were some of the largest invertebrates of all time and would have had very few predators at about 6 feet in length. So initially it was portrayed as a giant version of the tropical centipede genus Scolopendra, which are very large centipedes and are active hunters. But because none of the mouthpieces were found, they now think it did not have the ability to bite prey and was a herbivore. It's thought that they were able to grow much larger than similar animals today because of the high oxygen concentrations during the Carboniferous. Insects, millipedes, and spiders use a form of respiration that involves a row of holes down the length of their body through which air just diffuses in from the outside. So if the concentration of oxygen is low, they cannot grow to huge sizes simply because past a certain point they will suffocate. That is why today the largest insect is the Goliath beetle, because it is pushing the size limit for insects in today's air. However, back in the Carboniferous, the oxygen concentration was much, much higher. You didn't have animals on land, really, breathing the air, and you had a lot of plants. So our second extinct giant arthropod is Pulmonoscorpius, which, as its name would suggest, is a giant scorpion. And the largest would have been about 28 inches long when it was alive. So although we don't know for certain what their diet was, it is likely that they preyed upon small arthropods and small tetrapods. And in terms of their body, they aren't all that different from today's scorpions, just much bigger. Alright, so our final arthropod from the Carboniferous is Meganeura, which is basically a giant dragonfly. So these giant insects could have a wingspan of up to 70 centimeters long and is one of the largest known flying insect species. They were predatory and likely fed on other insects, and research on their close relatives suggests that they were adapted to open areas where their large eyes would have allowed them to see quite well. So despite their large size, they were relatively lightweight, with the largest only weighing about 100 to 150 grams, which means that they aren't true giant insects, because although they are much, much larger than their modern day relatives, their mass is not all that much larger than some modern day beetles. So now if we move on from our insects to our other animals that lived during the Carboniferous, because as we saw last time with Tiktaalik, the first tetrapods, which at this point would have been mostly amphibians, were just starting to crawl onto land, and by the end of the period they were fully well established. So our next animal is a genus of extinct amphibian called Eogyrannus, and this species is thought to be part of another group called Phoeidurpodon, but there is some debate whether or not it actually belongs in that group or if it is completely unrelated. They were one of the largest Carboniferous tetrapods, and they lived in the rivers, where they could grow up to about 4.6 meters or 15 feet long. They were strongly specialized semi-aquatic predators and used their long bodies to swim kind of like an eel does. So our final Carboniferous animal is the reptile Hylonomus. So this 20 centimeter long lizard-like reptile is the first confirmed reptile, and it had some small sharp teeth, which implies that it would have eaten small arthropods, so some small millipedes and early insects. So there are two other species that could also possibly be the earliest reptile. One is Westlonthia, which may have been an amphibian, and Cassinera, which we only have fragmentary evidence of. However, this species is the first that is unquestionably a reptile, and their fossils have been found in the remains of club mosses, which would suggest that they either hid and sought shelter in the stumps of fallen mosses, or that is where they made their nests. So those are our 5 Carboniferous animals that we have in here, and I think that is where we're going to leave you for today. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and I will catch you all in the next one. Goodbye!